The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah!
Go Cowboys!
Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Yeah, and so much for that.
It's time for The Break on DallasCowboys.com.
We were on the break!
With Ambar Garcia, Brian Broaddus, Patrick Walker, and Derek Eagleton.
It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, season 20, episode number 8. Welcome to the latest edition of The Break, presented by LG. We are live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the start. And today we're going to have a lot of different things we're going to talk about. We're into our position series. We are in segment 2 of that. Last week we hit quarterback, and that was the only position that we hit. Today we'll hit a few more. We're going to go over to the defensive side of the ball, talk a little bit about the secondary safety position, the cornerback position, also the linebacker position, maybe if we can get to it. But we'll see how it goes today and see how far we get on our SWOT analysis of each of those positions. I want to start first, though. OTAs. Let's talk about it. Cowboys will be starting. Actually, they started their OTAs yesterday. It will run through this week and then again next week, and then they'll have their mini camp the week following, and then they'll have a little break, as will we. So let's start with the OTAs. Tell me, what are you watching? What are you looking for this week as the Cowboys are getting started and have their full team on the field for the first time?
I think, to me, where my experience of dealing with these before is that the rookie mini camp, you kind of watch them get in stances and practice getting in a stance and learning where the practice field is and all that stuff. Now it's a little bit more, and Mike McCarthy talked about a little bit about the pace of practice and things like that. And that's where I think that these rookies, they're going to throw a lot at these guys initially. And then they're going to see who can sink and who can swim and who can sink a little bit, you know, and then they'll think, okay, this is the way we're going to have to coach this kid. The veterans are at a great advantage here, you know, and the rookies are just trying to, like, their heads are going to be spinning. And so what you're going to watch for is how many, and he mentioned this, they had some pre-snap stuff that they had to deal with that they'll clean up. But what you're going to watch is you're going to see where they're going to put these rookies in relation to the other veteran players. Are they running with the twos? Are they running with the threes, or are they running with their own group? You know, and ones that might be elevated a little bit.
When you say their own group, you're talking about rookies.
Yeah,
rookies.
There's like the undrafted guys, or maybe the first year players or stuff like that. Maybe you know, the players right now, maybe players, you know, 80 through 86 or whatever they got on their roster. You know, they might be running with guys like that, and then as you see them progress, you might say, okay, now they move them up. Mm-hmm. You know, they move them, and every week you might see a guy move up every week. That like, okay, we need to give this guy more. We're seeing more, or maybe guys will stay where they're at. So what you do is you find that where the base is, where they're going to start, and then how by the time we get to break, that where they've got these guys placed, and that'll give you an idea of what they're thinking about doing with these guys this summer when we get to Oxnard.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mike McCarthy just said. They're going to have 8 full installs, and, you know, OTAs are going to be more so targeted towards rookies, like Brian said. Veterans are going to come in, and they have an upper hand, obviously. But the goal for the Cowboys is to get all of the installs and all of the playbook information put in front of these rookies and have them to the point where once OTAs is over and once minicamp is concluded, that they have everything they need to go into training camp and try their best to hit the ground running. So that's the first part of it. Second part of it is, as Brian said, trying to see who's lining up where and with what group, right? So take Cooper Beebe, for example, or take Tyler Guyton, for example. Although we believe they have an excellent chance of starting in their respective positions, center and left tackle, maybe that doesn't happen right out of the gate. Maybe it's Brock Hoffman for the first team, with the first team and Dak Prescott at center, and Chuma Edoga, whereas with the second team with Cooper Rush / Trey Lance, now you're looking at Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton. And looking at those guys, Nathan Thomas, the 7th round pick on the defensive side, Justin Rogers, where is he playing? Is he definitely nose tackle, or are they trying to see if they can get something out of him at 3 tech? So it'll be interesting in those positions as well. Kalen Carson, they're going to start him, and I don't mean as a starter, but they're going to begin him on the outside, but also they want to see if he can do some flex in the nickel as well. So that'll be interesting. So those are some things I'm really keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I've said this before. I'll say it again. This is, to me, one of the most exciting parts of this time, because this is when you finally see the rookies merging with the veterans, and you get to see the visual of it, what you actually are working with now, and how does that look, even though not everyone's necessarily going to be where they're going to end up being at the end of, by the time the season starts, but you see everyone just merging together. And again, the Cowboys, they're really great at acclimating the players. I think that's the right word. Just getting them to where you're not just throwing them in deep waters, letting them drown or like swim. They're gonna be good at just letting them kind of get the system in, and they've been in meetings learning the books and the plays and the scheme and all of that already. But it's just, for me right now, because you're not gonna get a whole lot of action that's like training camp, wow, great play, it's more of the visual of like, okay, I can work with this. Or maybe, oh crap, this is not looking too good visually. This is the time to kind of start getting the first taste of that.
Yeah, what they'll do though too is when this is all over with, veterans and stuff will go home or go to their wherever they stay for a little bit before
Vacation
training camp.
time.
And then the rookies stay and work.
Yeah.
So anything that they might not pick up, and some coaches will stay around maybe and help some guys out if they're here. Or if not, they'll take a break too. But you get them into that weight program. You get them a little bit more stronger, a little bit more acclimate to the quickness of the game, the strength of the game. You get them built up, but you can also teach them some stuff too along the way. So anything that they might struggle with, you could circle back and say, okay, we need to work with these guys on this particular thing. Like I remember with Micah Parsons, they threw him in the deep end of the pool. We talk about sink or swim. But they threw him in. There was a lot. I remember Dan Quinn was doing a lot of things with him right off the jump. And Micah never seemed to bat an eye at that, So you'll see guys that do that. And that's where, like I say, there'll be a base level and then there'll be a final level that you'll see before they get to Oxnard.
And I'm also looking for, and talk about guys like Marshawn Nealon as well, how quickly can he progress under a guy like Greg Ellis, former, Cowboys Pro Bowler, who's going to focus on the edge rushers while I'm trying to pronounce his last name. Please don't kill me. Is the Z silent? Is it Gonina? I believe. The one we posted.
Just Zogina?
Zogina, there we go.
Yeah.
His demeanor, he's going to be focused more so on like the interior guys. So when Mozzie Smith is cleared, what does Gonina look like with coaching up Mizey Smith? What does Greg Ellis look like coaching up Marshawn Nealon? But from an overall standpoint, I'm going to be looking to see what rookies specifically are seeking information versus those that are waiting to be given information. So I'm keeping an eye on guys who are going up to coaches and assistant coaches and other players, like is Marshawn Nealon really gluing himself to DeMarcus Lawrence and staying in his hip pocket? Or is he, just using that as an example, or is he waiting for a guy like Greg Ellis to come up and say, hey, this is where you can improve? Or is it a combination of the two? Those guys who tend to stick to the hip pocket of guys like DeMarcus Lawrence or Kalen Carson with Deron Bland, so for Jordan Lewis, those are probably the rookies who are going to progress more quickly than the ones that are kind of sitting back waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah, the one notable absence so far after yesterday and probably will be absent the rest of the week, Micah Parsons. He did speak to a couple people in the media. I think Michael Gelkin was one of them, and Jane Slater as well. And what he talked about really was, I'm not here this week. I'm still continuing my off-season training. He does some off-season training and a lot of boxing work, actually, part of his regimen. But he does that, and he's going to continue to do that this week, and then he'll be here next week as well as the week after. And my thought was, I don't think anybody questions Micah Parsons' ability to be able to play football and prepare himself to play football. I think he plays football extremely well. And so for that, you have to give him the credit of he knows, obviously, what his body's like. My question is more on the line of being a leader. And he actually talked in the interview that he did with Michael Gelkin about this team needing his leadership and him having to step up in that way. And Michael even asked us astutely the question, how you make those two things go together when you say you need to be a leader, but then you're also not there for everything? But my question for you guys is, do you think that in any way this harms his ability to be a leadership by not being here? Again, I don't think anybody's questioning his ability to play football and prepare himself to play football. Yeah. But on the leadership side, do you think that in any way inhibits his ability to be a great leader for this team by not being here for everything?
Yeah, I think it does. We had this discussion on 105.3 The Fan yesterday about this. And not everybody could be Dak Prescott. Not everybody could build a football field in their backyard at their home and encourage guys to show up. He goes, I'm going to be out here working. If you want to come out and work with me, I'll be happy to have you here. It's a different way of leading. I do think it hurts that. I think that people, when you're out here every day and you're working and it's a voluntary situation, everybody else is out here working as well. And so there's a lot of young guys on this team that haven't played with Micah Parsons. A lot of young defensive players that haven't played with Micah Parsons. So you're absolutely right. There's no question about his ability to play football. I said this yesterday. I think he talks about wanting to be a leader, but I don't think he wants to be a leader. That's just my opinion about the player. I think Micah Parsons has a lot of other interests. I think he wants to do things his own way. I think football is such a regimented thing for him from July through January that he realizes that, okay, that's my part to be regimented. But when it comes to the other things, I think he wants to go do his own thing. And me personally, though, to be a leader, you have to show up every single day and put in the work. And he puts in the work, but he puts in the work his way, not the organizational way or the team way of doing things. So we could talk about being a leader, but if you're not showing up, I think it's hard for you to be that leader.
I would like him to be here or have been here. Obviously, we'll focus on the word voluntary. So
what do voluntary mean?
Right, what do voluntary mean, right?
But there's a lot of voluntary going on.
No, I agree.
No, absolutely. I don't think that's even the question.
So going back to what I was saying, I would prefer that he have been here up to this point. For all the reasons you said. But I had this conversation with some colleagues a couple weeks ago wherein the question becomes, when you're talking about Micah Parsons or anyone in the National Football League, leader versus elite player. Not every elite player is designed to be a leader, and not every leader is going to be an elite player. Question is, which one of those does Micah Parsons fall into? And I think he falls into the former, where he's an elite player, but he may never be that leader that you want if that kind of leadership you're looking for is the Dak Prescott kind of leadership. That you're not going to get a Dak Prescott kind of leadership with Micah Parsons. I don't think that that's how he's wired. But he's an elite player, so in that capacity, his production on the field will help motivate those younger guys, and they'll learn from his techniques, and they'll be able to pick his brain in practices and so forth and so on. But I think if you're expecting him to be at any point in his career to become that Dak Prescott type guy, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. And for me, it's all about expectation. I want him here. I want him to be able to be that guy, but then at a certain point, maybe he's just not, and you just kind of have to work with what it is.
I think I was going to say that to me, I think not everyone's meant to be a leader, and that's okay.
Right,
and it should be okay. Just
Some
because
people
you're
are
great,
soldiers.
just because you're such a great football player, doesn't mean that you should be forced to lead and to mentor other people. That should be a choice, and we should be okay with that not being the case for someone like him. It's totally fine. Where it becomes a problem for me, and I love Micah Parsons, the player, and everything, but where it just makes me raise an eyebrow is more the teammate type of thing. Are you being a teammate? Because this is a teamwork, and you should be part of the team, and you should be here during this time when OTAs have started. And more so than that, after seeing certain talks that happened throughout the season last year, where his teammate likeness, or I don't even know the word, was in question, where
Popularity.
and I'm saying like, are you throwing somebody under the bus during some interviews? Are you upset because you didn't make great plays during the game but somebody else did, but yet you're having a sad face, frown face? So I'm saying, when things like that are talked about throughout the season, are you really wanting to, it's up to you whether you want to be part of the team, or do you want to keep playing quote unquote solo and be your own person? And for a sport like this, it does matter. It does matter what happens in the locker room. It does matter for you to start and keep on building these relationships, because it does translate on the field when you have a good connection with your teammates and when you don't. And I think that could, and this is just me speculating, but if this is the trend that's going to occur during the season, I think that could potentially lead to some undesirable things as far as like teamwork environment and what happens in the locker room.
Yeah, I think he's put his coaches in a bad position right here. And if Dan Quinn was still here as defensive coordinator and everything was still the same, I could understand being away. But the fact that you have a new defensive coordinator here and new coaches as well, on the staff, and a big turnover on the defensive staff, I think you being here is important for that, just for your own good, for the coaches. See, it's hard for coaches to deal with players that are superstar players because you have to walk that line. You have to walk that line about, like, do I say something here? Do I not say something here? Mike McCarthy, of course, is going to talk positively about Micah Parsons. But where we need to kind of focus on this is that, he is a great player. But on the other end, I don't need you talking about being a leader if you're not willing to do everything to lead. That's the disconnect that I have right there. That's the problem. If I was working in the front office, I'm like, okay, let's not ask this guy to lead then. Let's not ask him to be one of our guys that way.
And this is why I don't have so much of an issue with CeeDee Lamb not being in the building at the moment. First of all, it's two different conversations because one is up for a contract talk right now, but also something Brian pointed out, and I pointed out on Twitter a couple of days ago. There's been so much change on the defensive side of the ball that you would want Micah Parsons to be here, be present, meet these new coaches in person. Granted, he's been having the meetings and, quote unquote, he's not behind on anything per Mike McCarthy. We get all of that. But there's something to be said for you being in the building and
on
being
the field
with these guys. But from a CeeDee Lamb standpoint, other than adding a quality assistant on offense, everything's pretty much the same, right? It's the same playbook. It's the same franchise quarterback. You got some changes up front on the offensive line, but there's nothing that CeeDee Lamb is risking getting behind on because there's not been that attrition in the coaching staff. There's not been that much attrition on the offensive side of the ball. You got a familiar guy back, if anything, in Ezekiel Elliott in your backfield. So I think that when people are comparing the two things, they're making the two things seem the same, but they're not the same at all. I feel like those are two different conversations. So from the CeeDee Lamb front, it's much easier for him to come in whenever he does come in. Hopefully it's June 4th minicamp, but, training camp is a possibility as well. Whenever CeeDee Lamb does report, it's much of a greater chance that he will hit the ground running versus when Micah Parsons shows up next week and now has to start kind of prepping his way to get ready for minicamp and a slow little ramp up because there's been so much change on the defensive side.
Also,
of the ball.
players understand and see when it is a contract thing, they're like, hey, you do your thing because you'll be
it's two different
potentially in a position like that eventually. But then when it's just by your own choice, it's more like, oh, once you finally get there, oh, you're too good to be out here with us working and sweating.
And I guess that's where I was going to go with this. And I'll say this before we go to break. We got to get a break. But one of the things that I think has to be factored in here is that, to me, leadership starts and ends with respect. If the people that are supposedly following this leader respect him and respects the decisions that he or she are making, then he can be a leader and he will be a leader. If not, then everything goes away. And so the question, which I don't think any of us can necessarily answer, a lot of those guys in that locker room have to answer it, is, do they respect him and respect this decision of him not being here? How do they see it? Do they see it as, as you said, you're too good to be out here with us, or you don't have time to be out here with us? Or do they see it as, I get it, that's cool, we'll see you next week. And when you show up next week, he's ready to go and he's talking and guys are following. If that's the case, this means nothing. This week means absolutely nothing. Now, if it's different, if next week he shows up and those people are looking at him, that's when I think there's a question. And that's really more for his teammates to answer, more so than even him, is how do they perceive him? Do they respect it or do they not? All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we'll jump into our position analysis. We're talking about safeties when we get back. DallasCowboys.com radio.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Cowboys fans, after that move, we've just coined the term Rowdy Replay. Let's roll back the tape.
Okay, there's our mascot Rowdy cheering on the boys. And now he's on his phone, on his Bank of America mobile banking app?
Staying on top of his finances with his virtual financial assistant, Erica.
Bank of America's digital tools are so impressive. Cowboys fans just can't stop banking. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/can't-stop-banking.
Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. Member FDIC.
Welcome back into Dear Doctor, the show where I answer life's questions with an ice-cold can of Dr. Pepper. Sheila, let's hear from our next caller, would you?
Dear Doctor, my friend supported me during a tough time. But what's the right gift that says, thanks for being a shoulder to cry on?
Okay, this one's easy. I say give her a delicious Dr. Pepper. Nothing says, thanks, girl, better than a one-of-a-kind soda. Yes, any Dr. Pepper flavor will do. Now, just a reminder that I don't need to be a real doctor to know that Dr. Pepper is the one you deserve.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to the break.
Dallas Cowboys Game Time, powered by Lenovo, the official gaming platform and community of the Dallas Cowboys. Sign up now for to compete in the EAFC 24 for a chance to win a VIP experience at Dallas Cowboys training camp. Qualifiers begin on May 25th and run through the 31st. Learn more about and register at DallasCowboysGameTime.com.
Welcome back. We're in the second segment of the break, live from SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star, presented by LG. And we're in. This segment is brought to you by Blockchain.com. Let's talk about our position series. We're doing what I call a SWOT analysis. Basically, we're talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you guys remember from last week, let's talk about the safety position. You've got Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Marquise Bell, Wanye Thomas, Israel Mukuamu, Amani Johnson, Julius Wood. These are names that are on the roster right now as safeties on this team. Let's start first with strengths. If you had to identify one strength of this position group, what would it be? Patrick, let's start with you.
Versatility. And that versatility comes from Malik Hooker being able to be a true center fielder in conjunction with Donovan Wilson being able to be kind of that heat-seeking missile for you, right? So he can give you some coverage, but he can also be a guy that helps you in run defense. He can be a guy that you send at the opposing quarterback in blitz packages. And then, similarly goes for Wanye Thomas, which is why in instances where Jaron Kearse was unable to take the field, Wanye Thomas was able to step in and help you cover tight ends and things like that. Now that Marquise Bell has been moved back to defensive back to safety, he's going to give you that same kind of flexibility as well as far as cover, but he can also play forward as well. So, and if you look at the size of some of these rookies, Woods being one of them, these are him specifically. That's a massive safety. So much so that when he was walking through minicamp and I walked up behind him, from behind he looked like a linebacker. And they were like, oh, no, that's the rookie safety. And I was like, wow, okay, so that guy can do some damage. So for me, it's versatility, and they still have some questions to answer, obviously. You love what Wanye Thomas was able to do in year two, Marquise Bell as well, but specifically Wanye at safety. He drew some high praise from Al Harris as well. But with presumably Jaron Kearse not returning, I don't believe that he will, this is going to be Wanye Thomas's job going forward, and I want to see him in a starter capacity. But versatility is going to be it for me.
Physicality. I think with you, we talk about Wilson, Thomas, Bell. You mentioned the young kids with Johnson and Wood. These guys all tackle, and they're all physical players. Where they're going to have to figure out is how can they play the back end of this, and hopefully Malik Hooker, will give you a little bit of that with some depth. But when you're talking about this team, they got some safety that are willing to play forward and willing to tackle, and I think that's the thing that we have to kind of look at going forward here is that who is going to be the guy that plays the deep part. They've got the guys that can play underneath and handle that. But Mike Zimmer's an interchangeable guy. So there's guys that play down are going to also have to be able to cover some. So whoever figures that out are likely the guys that are going to be on this field.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think that after the long drought of safeties, the lack of safeties, capable safeties, I think you still have a group that, with all these guys, every single name, these are guys that have shown you at different moments that they're capable and that they have something that excites you and that drive. You talk about tackling, that have that kind of aggressiveness to go forward on the play. And yeah, still, with Donovan Wilson, a little sad last year about it, but I still have hopes on him as far as like his play level. Yeah. He didn't kind of show up to the level I expected him to, but yeah, overall a solid group.
The interesting thing about Donovan Wilson, I'll throw out there, I think he actually got better as the season went along. Yeah. To me, I think he started earlier in the season. It was a little bit more, but I think as the season went along, we started to see more of that Donovan Wilson that we'd seen that they ended up paying because I think he showed up a little later. Talk to me about what you think the biggest weakness is of that position group.
They need to get better at taking the ball away. We talk a lot about what Trevon Diggs can do in taking the ball away. Deron Bland, those are two, one reigning NFL interceptions leader, one former NFL interceptions leader. Jordan Lewis can take the ball away, also in run defense as well, just as Christian McCaffrey. But when you look at the safeties, you had Donovan Wilson. He actually led the safety group, but with only 2 interceptions. Malik Hooker had only 1 interception last season. Wanye Thomas, for all the promise that he brings, he had no interceptions, but he had opportunities. I think on 2 different occasions, the ball hit him in the hands and he just didn't come up with it. So for me, if the Cowboys safeties can figure out how to match serve in that category with the Cowboys cornerbacks, there'll be a lethal group back there.
Who's the interchangeable guy at the other end? I mean, Malik Hooker could probably be the guy that has the best for that. I don't know particularly if you want to put Wilson in a lot of coverage. I think Wanye Thomas can cover. Bell, to me, is a little bit of a shorter guy, so I don't know how well you want to play him in coverage. We'll see with Johnson. When I was watching his tape and Wood's tape, the 2 rookies, they seem to be guys that had some cover ability, but who out of this group besides Hooker can really cover? So that's the question I'll have going through this.
Real quick on that, what are your thoughts on Mukwamu's ability to cover?
Yeah, that's the thing about it. I've been waiting for him since 2002. I know he was drafted in the 6th round in 2001. Him, Nahshon Wright, those are a couple of guys that, a 3rd round guy, a 6th round guy, they look the part. But I've been waiting for both these guys to play now, it seems like, for 3 years, So, is that a possibility? Sure. Will Zimmer get something out of him that way in the coverage aspect? I hope. But somebody's going to have to step up, when you're talking about coverage. They're not going to – it's just not the single high play down in the box defense that we've seen the last several years. These guys have got to be able to play some coverage, and somebody has to figure that out.
I can't find the right word, the right adjective that I'm looking for, and it's not like consistency because that's not really it, but I would like them to be more independent, if that makes sense, rather than consistent. Like, don't be the supporter.
You want to stand out more.
You talking about getting turnovers and things like that. Just be more of an independent player where you're the solid guy making your own plays rather than being the supportive cast member.
Be an impact guy. Be more of an impact guy.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. But overall, there's still room for growth in that area where they could really elevate and help elevate the defense.
It's funny you talk about turnovers, Patrick. Mike Zimmer's already really kind of apologized in the way he says, listen, our scheme might not be for everybody when it comes to creating turnovers. And if you're a Cowboy fan, we come on here in week 5 and we start talking about, the secondary hadn't created turnovers. Mm-hmm. But if they're not giving up big plays and they're tackling and all that, this might be the trade-off of the new scheme. Mike has already said, hey, listen, we might not create as many turnovers as we've seen here the last several years. So that's something, when we talk about turnovers as a group, that's something that might not happen just because of the way they play the scheme.
Yeah.
So
the interesting part about that is not getting as many turnovers has an inverse effect. It means the offense has a lot more pressure now to take 70, 75, 80-yard drives to get a touchdown, whereas before you were getting short fields. that changes a lot of things, and it puts a lot of pressure on your offense, and we'll see if the offense is capable of being able to handle that added pressure. Let's talk about opportunities. And if you remember, what I was getting at here is, what is an unknown right now? What's a question mark for them that you think has the best potential to become an asset? Let's start with you, Patrick.
Question mark has the potential to become the best asset. I'm going to draw a circle around Marquise Bell here, because I think that Marquise's trek in the linebacker core last year can pay dividends for him going forward as a defensive back. Whatever, any positives that he was able to take away from his time as linebacker, yeah, there was some negatives, obviously. Size is size. But I think there are some positives that he can take away that will help him, from a safety standpoint, be better at helping that group defend the run and helping the defensive backs defend the run. And if that comes to fruition, then that goes to the overall run support that the Cowboys need, or run defense that the Cowboys need desperately in 2024. So I would look for that as like an intangible. I just want to see how Marquise Bell's game has changed 2022 versus 2024 because of what occurred in 2023.
Donovan Wilson becomes a better cover guy. That would help because he's already got the physicality for the run defense stuff. It's either him or Wanye Thomas. I think Wanye Thomas is really more of a complete player. I think he covers well. I think he tackles well. I think he's a physical player. That's going to be a battle for that spot right there. I really do believe that Wanye Thomas is putting on weight. He's working out. He looks bigger. He looks, who can cover? If Donovan Wilson can cover, then that's the one thing that will help this safety group a bunch. Like we talked about, playing better in the second half. The first half of the season, he didn't play with any awareness at all. We remember the Arizona game, with some of the stuff that was happening there, guys running right by him and things. So if they find a way to get him playing more as a complete player, that will really help this group.
Yeah, with Thomas, he's the one guy that I think there's more room for growth, as far as there's more ability to do more things, because with Hooker, Bell, Mukuamu, I feel like you kind of know what you got there, and that's just kind of what it is to me. Donovan Wilson, I think he still has that little bit of just kind of taking a next step, but it's not too far. But Wanye Thomas, he's a guy that he has the speed. He can move very fast and easily. He has the ability. He's not afraid of tackling. He's still young. So there's just more things that excite me that I think he can grow and develop into even a more solid player for you that can contribute even more on the defense. So that's a guy that I would say.
We've got to get this last break. We'll come back when we finish up. We'll finish up on the safety conversation and talk a little bit about, too, what Jaron Kearse's absence may mean for this position, if anything. We'll talk about that when we come back. DallasCowboys.com radio.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Don't put off getting your oil changed, Dallas. Take 5 Oil Change, a proud partner of the Cowboys, is faster than you think. There's no appointment needed and no waiting room. Yep, you heard that correctly. Take 5 is so fast, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can take advantage of Take 5's fast, friendly, and simple service at any of their locations across the Dallas area. And remember, at Take 5, you stay in your car because they're faster than you think. Take 5, the official oil change of the Dallas Cowboys.
It's the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black. And right now, Cowboys fans can get 15% off their $75 order. Plus, because every deal needs a playmaker, your order will include a free 5-piece skincare set and free shipping. The Jack Black Playmaker is 4 of Jack's favorites and a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Make a play for the Playmaker at getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment current supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to the break.
Enjoy excellent dining, boutique shopping, and exciting events in the Star District in Frisco. Feature dozens of North Texas' best restaurants and shops, plus a calendar full of family-friendly events. There's always something to shop, dine, and do in the Star District. Visit thestardistrict.com for more info.
Welcome back. Final segment of the break live from SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star, presented by LG. We're talking about the safety position. We got
Is
one
show
more.
Too boring for you, Derek?
No, I'm good. We got one more area that we're hitting. We got one more area we're going to hit. It's called the threat. What is the biggest obstacle to this position group's success?
Say what now?
The biggest threat is that they don't adapt to how Zimmer wants to play. If he has to mask deficiencies with their ability to cover and has to adjust. Now, coaches adjust their schemes all the time, but there's a specific way that Mike likes to play his safeties. And if they don't get that interchangeable way, is there one guy or there are several guys that can't, that they're all just down players and none of them can cover, then that's the thing I think that I would worry about, to answer your question.
I think their biggest threat lies in a different position group. I think it's with the interior of the defensive line. If the Cowboys cannot figure out the interior of the defensive line, that means they're going to have trouble stopping the run. They're going to have troubles pushing the interior of the pocket on pass plays. And if they're having trouble pushing the interior of the pocket, then that allows quarterbacks to sit there comfortably and coverage windows begin to expand. And keep in mind, Trevon Diggs, he'll be back, but how much grace is he going to need to get back to form? Things like that. So that means the safeties and the secondary overall are going to have to be that much more up to task to make sure that they're doing something, number one, that they're stopping plays, pass breakups, tackling, sound tackling, but also going back to what I said, they need to improve upon takeaways. The crux would be on them, the onus would be on them to do more in the takeaway aspect. So the better the defensive line plays, the less work they'll have on them from a play-to-play basis. But if that defensive line doesn't get worked out, then they're going to have their hands cut out for them on a play-to-play basis.
I would agree with just them being able to adapt to this new whole system, similar to what Brian mentioned with Mike Zimmer. And I have full trust on Mike Zimmer and what he's trying to do with the defense. But remind me, it was Mike Nolan, right?
The first one.
Yes.
So with Mike Nolan, we saw it because it can happen where players just can't get a good grip of what is happening with
Coach,
the
can we see that again? Coach, can we see that again? If you're hearing that a lot in the practice, Coach, need to see that again. We got some issues.
Exactly. So I think again, I don't think that will be the case, but it could happen. Yeah. So it's just the transition of the difference in scheme and how quickly are they all able to adapt to this new coach.
Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of Mike Zimmer's system is it's not as complex as, say, a Mike Nolan style system. Is that how you see it? Okay, yeah. Because I think that's one of the big things that should make it a fairly easy transition. Now, what he's asking, that's a whole different thing of whether the guys are capable of maybe doing those things physically and as far as technique is concerned. But I don't think it's going to be a mental thing for them making a transition.
I will say this about Mike. This is my experience with him. If you're not a smart guy and you bust, he's not going to play you. Mm-hmm. He's not. And so he's going to try and disguise things. He's going to try and make muddy looks for quarterbacks and offensive coordinators to deal with. But if you're a guy that constantly is having problems picking up what he's trying to do, he will play with a lesser player than he will play with a star that can't pick it up. He's just not into in the busts. He's gonna limit that thing. That thing that happened in Green Bay, where they had all those guys in that playoff game running wide open. That I guarantee you that is not going to happen here. He's not going to allow that to be the thing that kills this defense of guys making mistakes when it comes to mental mistakes.
And what should happen as far as helping players who are unfamiliar with Mike Zimmer acclimate fairly quickly, talk about the addition of Eric Kendricks. We spoke with Kendricks a couple of times. He's already said he's doing all he can, even before OTAs, before veterans and rookies got together, to kind of help bring everyone up to speed on what Mike Zimmer's playbook is going to look like. Talk about Greg Ellis, former Pro Bowler, but he played under Mike Zimmer. So he not only knows the temperament of Mike Zimmer and can deliver that information to everyone involved, but he also understands what Zimmer is looking for, how he wants to structure a defense. So between guys like Ellis and Kendricks, at least you have those in-house guys that know and that can pull you Damone Clark to the side, DeMarvion Overshown to the side, can pull Marshawn Nealon to the side, or even DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, and say, hey, this is how Quinn was doing it, but let me tell you how Mike likes to do it. And that should help them kind of hit the ground running a little bit better before training camp gets around.
One big question mark for me this year is what are the Cowboys going to do at safety without Jaron Kearse? And not so much missing Jaron Kearse, the player, because I don't know if he'll have that kind of impact, but certainly from the standpoint of how they play defense. For the last couple of years, they really have used three safeties as though they were starters. And now they don't have that. My assumption is that nobody's going to necessarily step into that role. I don't know if that's how Mike will run his defense. But what do you guys think will be the biggest difference in not having Jaron Kearse as be a part of this group?
Man, I don't want to be the mean guy, but his play was starting to go downhill. It really was.
I think that's just a fact.
And maybe it was because of the fact that he had to play so many snaps. Hell, him, Bell, Will, all those guys last year, I mean, they had to fill in. They didn't have linebackers, and I'm saying that in a way of respect for the way that Kearse, but at the end, he couldn't run well enough. The tackling was falling off and all that. So, they move on. He moves on. He gave you a couple of great years. He really did. He was a leader in a lot of ways. He was a guy that stood up in front of the media and told you what was going right or wrong. You respect a guy like that. But his play started to diminish. And, once you watch the tape on that, you're like, okay, we got to move on. So we all wish him the best. But, like I said, I think it's one of those moves that they made in a way of knowing that his play was declining to a point that we can't play with a guy like that and have the type of defense that we want.
I mean, Jaron, in his first couple of seasons, we saw him reach prime form under Dan Quinn. Last season, I think the injuries started to kind of take their toll. His body started to wear down a little bit, and then guess what you found out when that started to happen? You started to find out that Wanye Thomas is a hell of a ball player. And then that means you had to start looking at those two things happening concurrently, whereas Jaron, he can still play football in the NFL, but maybe he's on the back end of his career, whereas Wanye Thomas, 2024 and beyond, maybe he needs to get that nod. And I think the Cowboys went into this offseason with that exact thought process, which is why they opted to not make an offer for Jaron Kearse, because they're looking at Wanye Thomas and Marquise Bell moving back to safety and saying, hey, we've got Malik Hooker locked down on a new deal that we gave him last July. We got Donovan Wilson locked down on a new deal we gave him last July. We got these two young, promising, very, very promising safeties. And maybe we still want to find out if we have anything in Mukuamu before his rookie contract is up. So Jaron Kearse, I do believe he can still play football in the NFL, but I just don't think he was a fit any longer for what the Cowboys have going forward.
Yeah, he was definitely declining, and I think something that you'll miss, though, is that I liked about him. One, his fire.
So fire.
His fire on the field.
100% locker room.
And also being a veteran, like that experience that he has. But like you guys said, I think it was, and this is just me assuming and my perception of things, nothing that I've heard actually, but visually and looking at what's going on, you can kind of tell that he was not really happy being here. Like you could see those on the side conversations one-on-one with even Dan Quinn off to the side after game, or not after, right after games, but like training camp. We saw that, and questions was maybe contract talks. Maybe he was a little bit upset that he was not getting offered a contract after Trevon Diggs getting his. But also, I noticed games where the Cowboys would win, and you see everybody coming off pretty happy, and then he'd be walking, one of the last one walking, and just kind of like moping a little bit. Again, this is just me assuming based on his body language, but you could tell that it wasn't going to be something that was gonna him staying here. He didn't seem as happy as he was like a year prior.
I will say, and you bring up an excellent point, Ambar, I am curious to see who steps up and takes that vocal role in that safeties group. That because Malik Hooker, he can be vocal, but that's not necessarily his demeanor as far as matching what Jaron did. Donovan is more of the quiet killer. Wanye has more of that energy, but he's still a young guy. Is he going to feel confident enough to be able to try to lead the room and lead the huddle? Because there were times that J-Ron Curse would be the one leading the huddle before games to get everybody fired up. So if nothing else, you're definitely going to miss that aspect of it. So I'm curious to see if him not being here creates a vacuum for someone else to step in and be that vocal leader.
Yeah, if I'm accurate, I think he's still available. I think
He
he's
is.
still a free agent at this point.
Yeah.
Which I actually thought he'd end up in Washington with so many other guys.
Well, they know.
When Dan Quinn. Yeah, and that also does say
That's
something
very
to
telling,
me
yeah.
that he's not there, because I think Dan Quinn rated as many guys who could come in and do the things that he wanted them to be able to do there in Washington. So we'll see what happens with him. All right, we appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be back on next week. We may have a different day next week. We'll give you guys some information. Tuesday might be the day that we end up doing it next week, but we'll let you guys know. Till then, for Patrick Walker, Brian Broaddus, Amber Garcia, I'm Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break, live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about